The sun was a white-hot coin in a pale blue sky. It had been that way for months. Samuel Clay stood at the edge of his field, the dry Texas dirt crunching under his boots like old bones. He looked out at what was supposed to be his wheat. It wasn't golden. It was a sad, thirsty brown, barely reaching his knee. Each stalk looked tired, just like he felt. This was his father's land. Every crack in the earth felt like a crack in his own heart. He'd tried everything he knew. He'd dug deeper for water. He'd prayed for rain. He'd worked from before dawn until long after dark. But the drought didn't care about hard work. It just kept baking the land day after day. He walked back to his house, his shoulders slumped. The house was quiet, too big for just one man. His wife was gone, passed on years ago. His children were grown and living in cities far away, where the talk was of computers, not crops. Sometimes he'd get a letter or a call, asking if he was sure about staying out there. He was never sure, but he didn't know how to leave. This dirt was in his blood, even if it was dying. The bank in Wichita Falls had stopped being polite. The last letter was clear. If he couldn't make a payment by the season's end, the land would be theirs. He had no money for the payment. He had barely enough money for groceries. The thought of losing the farm kept him awake at night, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly in the dark. That afternoon, he was sitting on his porch, a cup of lukewarm coffee in his hand. He was just staring at the horizon, not really seeing anything. A kind of numb hopelessness had settled over him. He was trying to figure out how to pack up 54 years of a life. Then he saw the dust dot at first. He thought it was just a little wind devil, a twist of dirt dancing in the heat. But it got bigger. It was moving straight towards his place, steady and purposeful. Not many people came out this way anymore. His stomach tightened a little. Trouble, sometimes, came riding in on dust clouds dot as they got closer. He could make them out. Riders, 7 of them. 1 older man leading, and 6 others following close behind. They weren't on the big horses he was used to seeing, but on tough-looking ponies that seemed to know exactly where to put their feet. They stopped right at his broken-down fence line. The old man got down from his pony. He was not tall, but he stood very straight. His hair, streaked with gray, was in 2 long braids. His face was weathered and serious, but his eyes were calm. He wore simple, clean clothes that had seen many miles. The 6 others were young women. They stayed on their ponies, watching. They were all different, but they shared the same quiet, watchful look. They looked strong, capable. One held the reins of the older man's pony without being asked. The old man walked up to the porch. Samuel stood up, unsure of what to do or say. Visitors were rare. Visitors like this were unheard of. "I am Iron Hawk," the man said. His voice was low and clear, like water running over stones. Samuel just nodded. Samuel Clay. Iron Hawk's eyes moved past Samuel, taking in the peeling paint on the house, the empty barn, the dying fields. His gaze was not judgmental. It was assessing, like a man checking the health of an animal. "We have been watching," Iron Hawk said finally, looking back at Samuel. "For 2 seasons now. We live on the land that touches yours, to the west." Samuel knew of that piece. It was rough, rocky ground, part of some old federal hold. He'd never paid it much mind. "Your land is sick," Iron Hawk stated, plain and simple. "But its bones are good. The water is still deep underneath. You are fighting it. You are trying to make it something it does not want to be right now." Samuel felt a flicker of old pride, of defensiveness. Who was this man to tell him about his own land? But the truth of the words snuffed that flicker out. He was fighting, and he was losing. "What's it to you?" Samuel asked, his own voice rough from disuse. "It is this," Iron Hawk said. The drought hurts my people too. Our ponies need grass. Our children need to see things grow. Your paper from the bank says you have rights to the water under this ground. We have the memory of this land. We know its old ways, its hidden paths. We know how to ask it for food, even when the sky says no. He paused, letting his words sink in. The only sound was the soft snort of a pony and the endless whisper of the dry wind. I come with an offer, Iron Hawk continued. Not to buy, to share. My 6 daughters, he said, gesturing back to the young women who watched every move, every word. They will work this land with you. They will show you the old methods. We will help you bring this soil back to life. In return, we share the water from your well. We share the harvest for our families. We save your farm, and you help save our way. Samuel was stunned. He looked from Iron Hawk's earnest face to the daughters. The oldest one, maybe in her mid-20s, met his gaze steadily. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Another, younger, had her hands resting gently on a bundle of plants tied to her saddle, as if they were precious things. It was crazy. It made no sense. Letting strangers, Comanche strangers no less, just come on to his farm? His tired, logical mind told him to say no, to thank them politely and watch them ride away. That's what everyone in the county would expect him to do. But then he looked back at his field, at the dead wheat. He thought of the bank letter inside on the table. He thought of the silence in the house and the certain end that was rushing toward him. He had nothing, absolutely nothing to lose. He took a deep breath, the dry air scraping his throat. He looked Iron Hawk in the eye. All right, Samuel said, the word feeling strange in his mouth. Show me. The kitchen felt smaller with them in it. Samuel put the old coffee pot on the stove, the silence thick and awkward. Iron Hawk sat at the warm wooden table, his hands resting calmly in front of him. His daughters stood near the door, a quiet, watchful line. Samuel realized he didn't have enough chairs. He felt flustered, his mind racing. So, Samuel started, his voice too loud in the quiet room. You all live out on the ridgeland? We do, Iron Hawk said, nodding slowly. It has been a place for my family for a long time. But the grass is thin now. The springs are only mud. Your well is strong, but your earth is hungry. We see both problems. One answer. The coffee began to perk, filling the room with its bitter smell. Samuel brought over 2 chipped mugs, setting one in front of Iron Hawk. He glanced at the daughters. Can I get them anything? Their legs are young. They are fine, Iron Hawk said, a tiny smile touching his eyes. He took a sip of the coffee, not flinching at its strength. This is good, strong. Samuel sat down across from him, wrapping his own hands around his mug for comfort. Your offer. I need to understand it. You want to work my land. For what? A share? How's that work, legally? The bank, they own more of this place than I do right now. Iron Hawk listened carefully. The paper rules of your world are not my rules. My rule is my word. I give it to you now. We do not want your deed. We want a partnership. For 1 year, your well water for our use. Half of what grows for our people. My daughters will be your crew. They know what to do. Samuel looked past him at the young women. The oldest one, who seemed to be the leader, held his gaze. She had a fierce patience about her. Can they even farm? I mean, the way I do? This time, the youngest daughter, who looked to be about 16, almost smirked, but a look from her sister stopped her. Iron Hawk set his mug down. You plant one thing in long lines and wait for the sky to feed it. That is a prayer. Sometimes the sky says no. We plant many things together, in harmony. We ask the earth itself to feed us. It is a different conversation. He leaned forward slightly. You have a creek bed that is dry, yes? Behind the west field? Samuel nodded. Been dry for 2 years. There is water under it. Not deep. We can show you how to call it up to the roots of your plants without a pump. You have flat fields where the rain runs off too fast, taking the good soil with it. We can show you how to make the land catch it, hold it like a cup. These things my grandmothers taught me. I have taught them. He gestured to his daughters. A part of Samuel wanted to laugh. It sounded like folk magic, like old superstition. He'd spent his life on diesel fuel, fertilizer, and bank loans. But that life was about to end. The bank man will come in 3 months, Samuel said, the truth in it heavy in his chest. If he sees a failed crop, he takes the land. You understand? If this partnership doesn't work, we all lose. You lose your water share. I lose everything. Ironhawk nodded. We understand risk. My people have lived with it for many generations. This is why my offer is serious. He looked over at his daughters and spoke to them in a language Samuel didn't understand. It was fluid and full of soft sounds. The oldest daughter nodded and stepped forward. She spoke directly to Samuel, her English clear and careful. I am Rain Song, she said. She pointed to the sister next to her, a slender woman with observant eyes. This is Willow. She understands plants, the way they speak to each other. She named the others Sparrow, Luna, Meadow, and the youngest, Little Bird. Each girl inclined her head slightly as her name was called. Rain Song continued. We have watched your work. You work very hard. But you are alone, and you are fighting the land. We will show you how to listen to it. First, we will build small dams of rocks and branches in the creek bed. This will slow the last rain when it comes. Let it sink deep. We will not plant your big wheat in the east field. The soil is too tired there. We will plant the 3 sisters there. The 3 sisters? Samuel asked. Corn, beans, squash, Willow said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was softer. They grow together. The corn is a pole for the beans. The beans feed the soil for the corn. The squash leaves are a blanket that keeps the earth cool and wet. They help each other. It is a family. The idea was so strange, so opposite to the clean, lonely Rose he was used to. But the word family sat with him in his empty house. What about my cattle? Samuel asked, almost a challenge. Little Bird, the youngest, perked up. They are sad, she said plainly. Samuel blinked. Sad? They walk with their heads low. Their food is no good. We know plants they will like, that grow here with little water. We can show you where they are. Makes their milk good, their meat strong. It was all so much. Samuel felt overwhelmed. His way had one path, and it had led straight off a cliff. Here was a whole network of tiny, winding trails he'd never seen. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at his dying fields. He thought of the absolute silence that would be here if the bank took it. Then he thought of the quiet activity of these 7 people, their knowledge, their offer of a fight not just with tools, but with ideas. He turned back to face them. Ironhawk watched him, waiting. The daughters were still, but their eyes were bright with a kind of focused energy he hadn't felt in himself for years. All right, Samuel said again. This time the word felt less like surrender and more like a first step on a rickety, unknown bridge. We start tomorrow, but we need a plan. A real one. Rain Song nodded. We have a plan. First, we walk the land. All of it. You will show us your lines. We will show you our stories hidden in it. That evening, after Iron Hawk and his daughters rode back to their home to gather their things, Samuel sat alone again. But the silence was different now. It wasn't empty. It was full of a strange, fragile possibility. He could hear the dry wind again, but now he wondered if, just maybe, it was whispering something he had finally started to learn how to hear. The morning after the agreement, Samuel woke up before dawn. A nervous energy had replaced his usual tired dread. He made a big pot of coffee and some biscuits, something he hadn't done in a long time. He wasn't sure what to expect. Just as the sun was beginning to color the sky pink, he saw them. Not on horses today, but walking in a line from the direction of the ridge, carrying baskets and tools. Rain Song was in the lead. They looked like they belonged to the land itself, moving with a quiet, sure-footed rhythm. Samuel met them in the yard. "Morning," he said, feeling awkward again. "Good morning," Rain Song replied. The others nodded. Little Bird, the youngest, was looking around with wide, curious eyes. "We will walk the boundaries first," Rain Song said. It wasn't a question. All of them. We need to see what the land is saying. So they walked. Samuel, who had walked these fences 1,000 times, now saw them through new eyes. He pointed out his fields, where he planted the wheat, where he ran the cattle. The sisters listened, but they were looking at other things. Willow, the one who understood plants, would often stray from the path. She'd kneel down in the dirt, touching the soil, smelling it, sometimes even tasting a tiny bit. She'd examine the weeds growing stubbornly in a ditch. "See this one?" she said, pointing to a tough, spiky plant. "Its roots go very deep, looking for water. It is telling you there is water far down here. This is a good place." They came to the dry creek bed, a gash of cracked mud and stones cutting through the west field. Samuel saw a waste. Sparrow and Luna, two sisters who moved in sync, saw something else. They talked quickly to each other in their own language, pointing at the curve of the bank. "Here," Luna said, turning to Samuel. "The water remembers its old path. When the rain comes, it runs through here too fast. We will help it slow down. We will build little walls across it, not to stop it, but to whisper to it to stay a while." "With rocks?" Samuel asked, skeptical. "You can't just pile rocks." "Not just rocks," Sparrow said. "We will use rocks and branches and old logs. We will make it like a ladder for the water to walk down slowly. Each little wall will catch the soil the water carries. That soil is the best soil. It is full of life. We will trap it here, and then we can plant here." They continued the walk. Meadow, a strong, quiet sister, paid close attention to the cattle in the far pasture. The animals came close to the fence, as if curious. "They are hungry for something green," she observed. "Not this dry grass. There are other plants they love. We will bring them." Finally, they came to the big east field, the one that had broken Samuel's heart with its failed wheat. It looked bare and exhausted. "This is where we will plant the 3 sisters," Willow said, her voice gentle but firm. "But not today. First, the earth needs to eat." Samuel was confused. "Eat? I fertilized it last season." "Your fertilizer is like a loud shout? It makes a big noise and then is gone. The earth needs a quiet, steady meal." She pointed to a patch of scraggly native grass at the field's edge. "We will cut that and other plants, the ones that know how to live here. We will lay them on the soil like a blanket. And we will not turn the soil over deep with your big plow. That lets all the moisture escape. We will only tickle the top, just enough to welcome the new seeds." It was a complete undoing of everything Samuel had been taught. Don't plow deep? Pile weeds on the field? It went against every farming magazine he'd ever read. He felt a hot flash of his old pride, his old frustration. This was his land. What did they know? He must have looked doubtful, because Rain Song stepped forward. My father said you are fighting the land. You are still fighting us in your mind. You asked for our help. The first thing to do is to listen. Samuel took a deep breath. He looked at their faces, not judgmental, but patiently sure. He looked at his dead field. He had nothing to lose, only his stubbornness. All right, he said, for what felt like the 100th time. Show me. We'll start with the creek. The work was hard, but it was a different kind of hard. It wasn't the lonely, grinding hard of driving a tractor for hours. It was a busy, shared hard. In the creek bed, he worked with Sparrow and Luna, hauling the stones they had gathered. They showed him how to place the biggest ones first, like a foundation, and then weave in branches, creating a loose, porous wall. It looked messy to his eyes, not like a proper cement dam. But he did it. Meanwhile, Willow and Meadow were leading Little Bird through the unused pastures and along fence lines, harvesting armfuls of specific weeds and grasses. They brought them to the east field and began to lay them down in a thick layer. It looked like they were burying the field in trash. Rain Song worked with Samuel in the afternoons on the cattle. She showed him plants he had always considered useless. A low silvery shrub, a kind of tough, broad-leafed herb. The cattle remember these, she said. Watch. She broke off a piece of the silvery plant and offered it to an old heifer through the fence. The cow sniffed it, then took it eagerly, chewing with a slow contentment Samuel hadn't seen in months. Days turned into weeks. A rhythm developed. The sisters would arrive at dawn. Sometimes Iron Hawk would come, watching silently, offering a single word of advice, then leaving. They ate lunch together in the shade of the porch, a quiet meal. Samuel learned their small habits, how Luna hummed when she worked, how Little Bird was full of questions about his tractor, how Meadow had a smile that could light up her whole face when she saw a new calf. One afternoon, they were all working in the east field, using small hand tools to make little mounds for the three sisters planting. The sun was high. Samuel, his shirt soaked with sweat, paused to drink some water. He watched as Willow gently placed a corn seed in the center of a mound, and 4 bean seeds around it, and finally, squash seeds in a ring around the outside. It looked careful, like a ceremony. Does it really work? He asked, his voice softer than he meant it to be. Willow didn't look up, her fingers carefully covering the seeds with the rich, composted soil they had made from old manure and the rotting plant blanket. The corn will grow tall and strong. It needs the sun. The beans will climb the corn. They are not heavy. They will give a gift to the corn through their roots. The squash will cover the ground. Its big leaves will be an umbrella, keeping the earth cool. Its prickly stems will keep the rabbits away. They are not alone. They are a family. They help each other grow. Samuel looked down the row, where her sisters were doing the same. Rain Song was showing Little Bird the exact depth to plant. They were all focused, connected to the task and to each other. A strange feeling settled over him. It wasn't just hope for a crop. It was the feeling of being part of something. He wasn't the lonely general of a failing army anymore. He was a member of a crew. He bent back down to his own mound, copying Willow's movements with a new kind of care. He was learning a new language, the language of the land. And for the first time in a long time, the silence in his heart was filled not with emptiness, but with the simple, solid sound of work and the quiet hum of belonging. The change didn't happen overnight. But one morning in late spring, Samuel walked out to the east field and stopped in his tracks. A soft green fuzz had broken through the brown blanket of old plants they had laid down. It was the corn, the beans, the squash, all pushing together toward the sun. The sight hit him in the chest, a feeling so sharp and good It was almost a pain. He just stood there, looking at that defiant, fragile green. The creek bed, with its little rock and branch dams, held the secret of that green. A few good rains had come, not enough to break the drought, but enough to matter. Instead of rushing through and vanishing, the water had slowed down. It soaked into the ground right there, feeding the roots of the new plants nearby. The sisters had been right. The land just needed to be reminded how to drink. A new kind of life settled over the farm. It was a busy, quiet hum of activity. The sisters arrived every day, not as visitors, but as part of the place. Samuel found himself listening for the sound of their voices in the morning. He'd learned who was who not just by name, but by their work. Rain Song was the planner, always seeing the next task. Willow's touch was with anything that grew from seed. Sparrow and Luna worked together like two hands of the same person, building and mending. Meadow had a calm strength with the animals, and Little Bird was everywhere, her curiosity endless. One afternoon, Samuel was trying to fix a leaking pipe from the well. He was lying in the dirt, his wrench slipping, grumbling to himself. Little Bird crouched down nearby, watching. "You are angry at the water," she stated. "I'm not angry at the water." "I'm angry at this rusted pipe," Samuel muttered, "but the water is just trying to go where it wants." Like the creek. She pointed a small, dirty finger at a spot just upstream of his repair. "If you put a little rock here, under the pipe, it would lift it up. The drip would fall straight down into the bucket, not make mud. Then you can fix it better when the Iron Man comes." Samuel stopped and looked at her, then at the pipe, then at the old bucket sitting uselessly nearby. He moved the pipe onto a flat stone. The drip began to fall with a clear plink into the bucket. He finished the temporary fix, his frustration gone. He looked at Little Bird. "How do you know that?" She shrugged. "It is just seeing." That was the heart of it, Samuel realized. They saw the farm differently. They didn't see problems to fight, but patterns to understand. They introduced him to plants he'd spent his life pulling out as weeds, showing him how they brought minerals up from deep soil, or fed the bees. The cattle, grazing on the mixed pasture of native grasses and herbs the sisters had encouraged, grew sleek. Their coats shone. The farm wasn't just surviving. It was, for the first time in years, thriving. But the world outside the farm's boundaries was a different story. When Samuel went into town for supplies, he felt the change in the air. The chatter at the feed store would slow when he walked in. He'd catch pieces of conversations that stopped when people saw him. Seen those Indian girls out there all the time. Old man's lost his mind, letting them run wild on good land. Bank's gonna take it anyway. What's it matter? He'd pay for his nails or his coffee, his face hot, and leave without saying much. The respect he'd once had as a farmer, even a struggling one, was being replaced by stares and whispers. He was becoming an outsider. It weighed on him, a low, dark cloud on the edge of his new happiness. One evening, Ironhawk came to the house. He and Samuel sat on the porch as the sun set. The old man had a way of sitting in silence that wasn't awkward, but comfortable. Finally, he spoke. "The wind carries talk. My daughters hear it when they go to the post office. You hear it in town." Samuel nodded, staring at his hands. "They don't understand?" "They understand fear," Ironhawk said. "They see something different, and it frightens them. They see life where they expected death. It confuses them. A confused man often becomes an angry one. What do we do about it?" Samuel asked. "We do nothing," Ironhawk said calmly. "We tend our garden. We care for our animals. A strong plant does not argue with the wind. It bends, or it puts down deeper roots. We must put down deep roots." But the anger from town had wheels. A few nights later, Samuel was woken by the sound of engines too loud and the flash of headlights washing over his bedroom ceiling. He pulled on his pants and went to the window. 2 pickup trucks were idling at the end of his driveway. He could see the glow of cigarettes in the dark, hear rough laughter. Then a bottle smashed against his mailbox post. His heart hammered against his ribs. Anger, hot and red, flooded him. This was his land. He started toward the door, intending to get his rifle, to shout, to chase them off. As he passed the front window, he saw another figure. Outside, standing calmly in the dim light from the porch bulb, was Iron Hawk. He must have been staying nearby. He was alone, dressed simply, his arms at his sides. He was just looking toward the trucks, not moving. Then Samuel saw movement from the bunkhouse, where the sisters sometimes stayed during busy weeks. Not all of them, but Rain Song and Meadow. They walked out and stood slightly behind their father, one on each side. They were also still watching. The image stopped Samuel cold. The 3 of them, facing the noisy trucks and the dark. Not hiding, not threatening, just present, claiming their space without a word. The laughter from the trucks died down. The engines revved once, but it sounded unsure now. A door slammed. After a minute that felt like an hour, the headlights wheeled around, and the trucks rumbled off back down the county road. Samuel let out a shaky breath. He opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. Iron Hawk turned and looked at him. The daughters looked too. "You all right?" Samuel asked, his voice rough. "We are fine," Iron Hawk said. They wanted to see fear. They saw none. It is not a game they know how to play. Rain Song spoke, her voice steady. "They will talk more now, but they will think harder before they come back." Samuel looked at them, standing there in the quiet returning dark. His own anger had cooled, replaced by something harder and stronger. It wasn't just his land they were protecting. It was their land now. The partnership wasn't just about water and crops anymore. It had become about standing back to back. "Next time," Samuel said, "you wake me up." We faced them together. Iron Hawk nodded slowly. "Yes, together. This is the route." They went back inside, but sleep was long in coming for Samuel. He lay awake, listening to the sounds of his farm, the crickets, the distant low of a cow. They weren't sounds of loneliness anymore. They were the sounds of a place that was defended. A place where a different kind of family was putting down deep roots against whatever wind might blow. The summer heat built up, but this year the land was ready for it. The east field was no longer a sad brown stretch. It was a living tapestry of green and gold. The corn stood tall and proud. The bean vines curled around their stalks like loving arms, and the broad leaves of the squash created a cool, shady carpet over the soil, holding the moisture in. You could feel the difference. Just walking into that field was cooler, alive with the buzz of bees and the rustle of leaves. The little dams in the creek bed had done their job. After each rain, a small trickle of water would linger for days, seeping slowly into the earth. The cattle pasture was dotted with tough, native plants the sisters had encouraged, and the animals were fat and healthy. For the first time in years, Samuel looked at his farm and saw not what was missing, but what was there. It was a miracle, but a quiet, hard-won one, built stone by stone and seed by seed. The morning the bank manager was due to arrive, the sky finally broke. Not a violent storm, but a slow, steady, soaking rain, the kind the land had been dreaming of for 3 years. It fell on the lush green of the 3 sisters. It filled the little rock dams to overflowing. It pattered on the thick, healthy grass in the pastures. Samuel stood on the porch, watching it fall. He wasn't anxious. He felt a deep, solid calm. Iron Hawk stood beside him, the 2 men silent in the face of the gift from the sky. The sisters were moving quietly in the barn, putting the final touches on the harvest they had gathered for show. The manager's car came down the muddy lane, its windshield wipers swishing. He was a neat man in a suit that seemed out of place. He carried a leather folder, his face set in a polite, professional look of pity. He'd come to finalize the foreclosure, to take the keys. "Mr. Clay," the manager said, holding a briefcase over his head as he hurried onto the porch, "I'm afraid we have some papers to sign today." He glanced at Iron Hawk, his expression flickering with surprise and disapproval. "Come in out of the rain," Samuel said, his voice even. "We can talk in the barn. It's drier, and I've got something to show you." The manager, confused, followed Samuel and Iron Hawk across the yard to the big barn. Inside, the air was sweet with the smell of hay and ripe vegetables. The sisters were there, standing quietly near the back, and between them and the door were rows of full burlap sacks of multicolored corn, baskets of plump beans and squash, bundles of medicinal herbs, jars of honey from the new hives Meadow had tended. It was a bounty. It wasn't a mountain of cash wheat, but it was more food than this farm had produced in a decade. Samuel walked over and put a hand on one of the sacks. "This is from the East Field," he said. He pointed to another pile. "That's from the garden by the creek. We've got enough to feed my household, and—" He nodded toward Iron Hawk and his daughters. "Their community through the winter, with plenty to sell at the local market. The cattle are in better shape than they've ever been. The land is healing." The bank manager just stared. He walked slowly along the rows, touching a perfect ear of corn, hefting a heavy squash. His polite mask had slipped, replaced by sheer bewilderment. "How? The drought. We wrote this land off." "You wrote my way of doing things off," Samuel corrected him gently. "We tried a different way. An older way." He looked at Iron Hawk, who gave a slight nod. "This is my partner, Iron Hawk, and his daughters. Their knowledge saved this land." The manager looked from Samuel's calm face to Iron Hawk's dignified expression, to the watchful, capable sisters. He cleared his throat, all his prepared speeches useless. "This is highly irregular, but this is clearly productive." He opened his leather folder, not to pull out foreclosure papers, but to look at the loan document. "The payment due is quite specific, Mr. Clay. It requires currency." Samuel walked to an old metal lockbox on a shelf. He opened it and took out a thick envelope. He handed it to the manager. "Count it. It's all there. The full payment plus the interest." The manager, his hands almost fumbling, did count it. It was all there. The money had come from selling early produce, and some of the honey at a premium in town, to the very people who whispered about them. Samuel saw the moment the fight went out of the man. He was looking at success, and in business, success was the only argument that mattered. "The loan is satisfied," the manager said, almost to himself. He put the money in his own case, snapped it shut. He looked around the barn one more time, at the plenty that defied all his expectations, then back at Samuel. "What will you do now?" Samuel didn't even have to think. He had thought about it for weeks, talking it over late into the nights with Iron Hawk on the porch. "We're going to keep going," Samuel said. "But not just us. We're filing new papers. Not for one farm with hired help." He took a deep breath, the words feeling right and true. "We're making it official. The Iron Hawk and Clay Cooperative Farm. We're combining my land and the use rights to the ridgeland. A real partnership. We're going to grow food this way, and we're going to teach others who are struggling how to do it too." The manager had no more words. He just nodded, shook Samuel's hand in a daze, and walked back out into the cleansing rain, his worldview quietly overturned, not after the car's taillights vanished, The barn was quiet for a moment. Then Little Bird let out a small, happy breath. And then they all smiled, the sisters, Iron Hawk, Samuel. The sound of the rain on the roof was the only celebration they needed. That evening, after the sisters had gone back to their home on the ridge to share the news, Samuel and Iron Hawk sat on the porch again. The land, washed clean, glowed in the twilight. A cooperative farm, Iron Hawk said, pasting the word. It is a good name. It speaks of working together, not just side by side, but as one thing. That's what it is, Samuel said, his voice thick with an emotion he couldn't name. I was so alone here. I was just waiting to lose everything. You didn't just save the farm. You all. You gave me my family back. Iron Hawk placed a hand on Samuel's shoulder, a brief, solid touch. You did not need saving. You needed remembering. You needed to remember that land is not just dirt you own. It is a relationship. You have remembered well. Samuel looked out. He didn't see his farm anymore. He saw the creek where the water lingered, the field where the three sisters helped each other grow, the pastures where happy cattle grazed. He saw the lights twinkling from the direction of the ridge, where his partners, his friends, his unexpected family lived. He had started with nothing but dust and debt. Now he had everything that mattered. The future wasn't a thing to be feared anymore. It was a field, waiting to be planted together.